Peter Dinklage is one of the most recognizable actors in the world. He's transcended the typecasting box that he can very easily fit in and become an icon in his own right, despite his differences. However, this arguably made him the go-to and de facto spokesperson for any conversation regarding dwarfism within the entertainment industry.
Peter Dinklage.
Peter Dinklage.
Peter Dinklage, Game of Thrones.
But now he's reached the pinnacle of success and made his millions, he's been accused by many short people that he's now drawing up the drawbridge for other short actors.
You, Peter Dinklage, piece of shit. He costed so many people in my community jobs. He costed so many people jobs.
So how did Peter's comments on a podcast about one of the most disastrous movies of all time lead to lasting effects on people with dwarfism in Hollywood? But first, if you didn't know, I make weekly documentary videos here on this channel, and I'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe to the channel so we can keep this YouTube dream alive. But if YouTube wasn't enough, my videos are now also available on Spotify, so if you can't get enough of me, you can now watch and listen to all my videos on the go. So make sure to check that out as well. Anyway, back to the video. Now, to understand why Peter's comments hit such a nerve, you have to look back at the history of how Hollywood has portrayed dwarf actors. From The Wizard of Oz in 1939, where over 100 little people were cast as munchkins, to fantasy epics and comedies in the 80s and 90s, where dwarf actors were often used as visual punchlines or mystical side characters. Sure, it's work, but imagine actually being good at your craft and then being limited to playing pixies or munchkins. One of the biggest names in the little people community was Billy Barty, an actor, activist, and founder of Little People of America. His campaigning for more authentic representation and better treatment of short-stature performers helped show that people with dwarfism could be real performers deserving of respect. Then came the 80s and 90s when actors like Warwick Davis helped redefine the space. From Return of the Jedi to Willow and Harry Potter, Warwick proved that dwarfs could also lead in major productions. So when Dinklage entered the acting world in 1995, he was hustling through the same indie grind that so many actors face. However, his roles in these early years were still filled with smaller parts, quite literally. Cameos, background roles, and short appearances where he'd be cast because of his height. But Peter actually turned down a lot of work in these early days because he didn't want to be part of the cycle of cheap laughs and stereotypes.
Yeah, I just wanted to not be a fantasy dwarf. Not to be crass, but I wanted to have a dick.
Yeah.
Like, and that's so like, it's like, you know, when clinically what you are has become sort of poached by the fantasy world as a term for somebody who's not human, like a gnome or an ogre or whatever else. There's a fairy, pixie, leprechaun, elf, everything, dwarf. No, that one's real. That one's actually a thing. There's no gnomes in the world, but that's a thing. So, but therefore, when you do that, you're just clipped. And I was like, I can't be clipped, guys. And they do that with not just people my side.
This stance earned Dinklage a lot of respect, but also limited his opportunities. However, if you're a good actor, all you need is an opportunity to change how your stars align. This moment came for Peter when he was cast in the 2003 movie The Station Agent, where he played a man who moves to rural New Jersey to live a life of solitude but meets an extroverted hot dog vendor. The role wasn't a caricature or a punchline, but an actual portrayal of a human experience. The film gained instant critical acclaim, and thanks to Peter's performance, it kind of made casting directors realize that you could cast a dwarf actor without the role being directly about dwarfism. So when Peter landed the role of Tyrion Lannister for Game of Thrones in 2011 and became a breakout megastar, it was a monumental moment for the dwarf community. Over the course of 8 seasons, Dinklage had the most screen time of any actor on the show, won 4 Emmys, a Golden Globe, and arguably became the most successful dwarf actor in history. It was clear as day proof that talent can transcend any typecasting. The problem is, once you become the poster child for progress, people will start expecting you to speak for everyone, and that's where things start to go wrong. During an appearance on Mark Maron's podcast in January 2022, Peter made comments critiquing Disney's decision to remake Snow White and commented how it's kind of backwards.
Literally no offense to anything, but I was a little taken back by they were very proud to cast a Latino actress as Snow White.
Yeah.
But you're still telling the story of Snow White.
Snow White, yeah.
Seven Dwarfs.
Sure.
You're progressive in one way, but you're still making that fucking backward
Oh.
story of 7 dwarves living in a cave. What the fuck are you doing, man? Have I done nothing to advance the cause from my soapbox? I guess I'm not loud enough. They were so proud of that, and all love and respect to the actress and to people who thought they were doing the right thing. But I'm just like, what are you doing?
In response to Peter and the swelling activism about how it's reinforcing stereotypes, Disney released a statement on the 25th of January 2022, stating, "To avoid reinforcing stereotypes from the original film, we are taking a different approach with these 7 characters, and have been consulting with members of the dwarfism community. We look forward to sharing more as the film heads into production after a lengthy development period." Basically, Peter's criticism made Disney panic. They didn't want to look regressive, so they scrapped the idea of casting 7 human dwarf actors and instead created magical creatures of all size, races, and genders. A few days after Disney's statement, little comedian Brad Williams weighed in on Peter's comments during a podcast.
It's this weird thing where he's saying, like, oh, it's bad that we're still doing Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs, so he doesn't necessarily want that. But as little people actors, it's like, well, we kind of want to work. We kind of want that part, and if that's what's available, then that's what we'd like to do. But at the same time, I get what he's saying, because, yeah, people are like, well, was it that bad? I go, yeah, because at the time, dwarves really didn't have any representation. So would you say, oh, that my friend's a dwarf, the Rolodex in people's heads goes right to Snow White.
A few days after this, on the 1st of February, legendary wrestler Hornswoggle, aka Dylan Postel, was interviewed by Tucker Carlson. In the interview, he called out Dinklage for his comments.
I mean, my biggest thing is he wants to be progressive, and it's all about progression, and I support that completely, but the issue is him being progressive is eliminating 7 potential dream jobs from the dwarf acting community, and that's my issue here. Is he's saying he wants to move forward and do good for the community when these are dream jobs. I got hired by WWE. WWE was my dream job since I was 4 years old. Since I was 4 years old, all I wanted to be was a WWE superstar, and in any other circumstance it wouldn't have been able to be done by me. I'm not 6 foot, I'm not 250 pounds, but they were looking for a person like me, a little person, to fill this role. They hired me, and I got to live my dream for 10 years. Now there's dwarf actors out there that their dream is to star in a film, especially a Disney film, because as we know, Disney doesn't do remakes or any of their movies at a small scale. They were gonna blow this movie up, obviously. And these are 7 roles that are few and far between for dwarves anyways, that were made for us. And that's what's ridiculous to me about the whole situation is it's not being progressive. You're hurting the community by what you're doing. Who put this guy in charge, and why is he the single voice, like, for a whole community?
On the 15th of July 2023, on-set photos of the magical creatures leaked to the public, which immediately had people doubting the film before it even come out. Only Disney would look at the story of Snow White and think to themselves, yeah, we'll keep the name but get rid of everything else. Wouldn't it be the most obvious move for Disney to do by actually hiring 7 real dwarfs for their inclusiveness? But it wasn't just the public that was reacting. A lot of personalities within both the dwarf community and the entertainment industry began speaking out, with legendary Jackass member Wee Man giving his opinion.
It's a bad thing. I'm not agreeing with it. One, because what they're doing is pretty much you're replacing jobs that people could have as little people. Okay. Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs, it's 4 dwarfs. What we were discussing too the other day was the Wonka movie. And Hugh Grant is now playing an Oompa Loompa. So I guess, Hugh Grant, you're now identifying as a little person.
Oh, okay.
Interesting.
I mean, right? Okay, well, I know Peter Dinklage, criticized the film for having little people play dwarves because he said it typecast them.
It totally does. But I do think that this is Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs. Why are you hiring Snow White and the 7 average people?
But this isn't the first time a famous small actor has complained about the Snow White film. Back in 2012, during the production of Snow White and the Huntsman, Warwick Davis criticised the film for hiring actors, then shrinking them down with VFX, instead of hiring actual small people. Considering the vast experience of many short actors working in the film industry today, I think it's inexcusable that, in casting for Snow White and the Huntsman, producers did not utilise this pool of talent. My colleague, Peter Dinklage, won an Emmy for his performance in Game of Thrones, proving that short actors need roles that will not only challenge them, but allow them to express themselves as actors in their own right. It's not acceptable to black up as a white actor, so why should it be acceptable to shrink an actor to play a dwarf? In 2015, Warwick also criticised a panto in the UK after it decided to drop dwarfs from their Snow White production out of political correctness. It loses something if you don't have Snow White's dwarfs. I've been in a lot of pantos and I don't think it's offensive at all. I'm sure that there are those out there who don't like the term, but as a short actor, I want to be given the choice about whether I appear in the panto or not. I don't want someone making that decision for me. On the 27th of October 2023, the first official image of the film was released to the public, where this time it was revealed that the 7 magical creatures were now 7 CGI dwarfs. But at this point, this wasn't even one of the biggest issues of the film's production. During 2024 and the build up to the film's release, lead actor Rachel Zegler explained how great colorblind casting is, called the original 1937 version of the film weird, made comments about Donald Trump, and held opposing views about the Israel-Palestine conflict to her co-star Gal Gadot. And this was all during the press tour for the film. The magnitude of hatred for this film before it even came out was unbelievable, and made it essentially dead in the water before it even had its first week at the box office. On the 13th of March 2025, Disney held a small-scale premiere for the Snow White film to try and limit backlash as much as possible. But the controversy hadn't died down. In fact, it got worse. However, short actor Martin Klebba, who voiced the grumpy dwarf in this new Snow White film, defended Disney's decision to CGI the characters. When it comes to the animated part of it, I guess you could have left it with just doing the animals animated, and you could have tried to maybe find 7 little people. But you've also got to find 7 little people who could act and have good chemistry together. I don't know other than Mr. Dinklage or Warwick Davis, you know, there's only a couple of guys out there that really could pull off the acting. When asked about little people who chose not to audition for the voice role, he said they were welcome to audition for the voiceover. If they decided not to, that's their right. But I didn't look at it like that. I was like, look, if it's going to be CG, then they're going to look at me as an actor and they're just giving me an opportunity. I was one of the 7 that got to be a voice of one of the most iconic franchises ever, so that's why I did it. I'm not mad at Disney, like I said. They're the ones who fed me, and they're the ones who allowed me to have the life that I've had. Now, this is kind of an interesting take, but having read that, I do wonder if Martin would have had the same opinion if he wasn't cast in 2 major Disney projects. After the film's release, more small actors spoke out, with Dr. Erin Pritchard and Chun Tan speaking on This Morning, where they mentioned that Dinklage was kind of hypocritical in his stance, and that he may have made things even more difficult for dwarf actors.
Peter Dinklage has done a lot of roles where his height has been utilised, and I believe he has done Snow White and 7 Dwarfs pantomime before to elevate his career. A lot of my colleagues as well have done that and got into, because you get acting critics from doing such things as pantomime. And his height was made fun of in Game of Thrones. You know, there was derogatory comments made towards him throughout the series.
Like Peter Dinklage, yes, what they showed in Game of Thrones, because like he said, no pointy shoes, no beard, so it wasn't a stereotypical dwarf. And yes, he showed the abuse that you kind of get, but also he had the comebacks. He was a rounded character, not just this thing that sneezed.
There's a lot of dwarf actors that do want to play this role, which is why there are protests coming up for this. And I would have loved to have played a part in it. Okay. And there's many other colleagues that I know that would have loved to play the part as well.
On the 28th of May 2025, Hornswoggle was interviewed in a podcast where he reiterated that he really doesn't like Peter Dinklage, and went on to explain how his actions cost so many people jobs.
I feel like you're one of the most recognizable little people on the planet.
You, Peter Dinklage, piece of shit.
That's real heat, too.
I can hate him. He costed so many people in my community jobs with that Snow White bullshit. Pisses me off. Like, he costed so many people jobs. So many people.
Because he wanted to be the only dwarf.
You know what? I don't think that. I think he wanted to make a statement, and he thought he was making some cool, hip thing, but it wasn't. When he did Elf, that check cashed just fine. Tyrion Lannister was a role for a little person. He cashed that check. I'm okay not going out for Brad Pitt's role. Give me Grumpy or Happy or Sleepy. In a major Disney remake?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you're gonna have 7 dwarves, then they're extras, then they're stunt doubles that are all gonna get paid.
Bro, I fucking love that Brad Williams and Hornswoggle aren't letting this slide. Dinklage could totally be producing, directing, or helping hire little people actors. Instead, he's the gatekeeper. Dink was fine taking all those supposed bigoted roles, and then he pulled the stepping stool behind them. The tragic thing about all of this is that it could have been a turning point. Disney had the chance to redefine the 7 dwarfs. They could have been given personality and depth, to make them something more than their archetypes from 1937. Imagine if they cast 7 dwarf actors and made them heroes in their own right. Imagine if Dinklage Dinklage had produced that film, using his influence to reshape those characters for the modern era instead of condemning them altogether. But the truth is, Dinklage will always be a trailblazer. He broke barriers, proved doubters wrong, and redefined what success could look like for someone with dwarfism. No one can take that away from him. But somewhere along the line, instead of challenging stereotypes through better storytelling, he pushed for their complete removal in film. He didn't ruin Hollywood for dwarfs maliciously, but his voice was loud enough to make the industry stop listening to everyone else. And that's what makes this situation so jarring. The man who fought against typecasting may have typecast his entire community as something too controversial to touch. Anyway, if you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching this video. It really does mean a lot to me. If you want to listen to me on the go, all of my videos are now available on Spotify, so make sure to follow me over there. And also, make sure to follow me on Instagram at PhatMemer. And while you're still here, like this video, subscribe, comment below what you want to see next, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.